Hey, welcome everyone. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Fire TV Stick 4K model released in 2018. Even though this was originally released in 2018, this model is currently the only 4K media player stick running Fire TV that is available. It's currently being sold for $70 Canadian or $50 US. The remote design is plain but effective. Navigation and media controls are easy to reach. There's also an IR blaster built into this remote, so if your TV, soundbar, or AV system is compatible, you can control the volume and power for those devices from this one remote. The other notable item is the button, which I'll demo later on. This remote uses two AAA batteries included in the box. There's also a Fire TV remote app available for smartphones, which works well and is incredibly fast and responsive. The actual media player stick is rather small, about 8.5 centimeters. Not including the HDMI part, which plugs into the TV or monitor. The Amazon logo is on top of the media player. One end has a port to connect HDMI into your TV or monitor. On the side is a port for micro USB power to be plugged in. Unfortunately, not USB-C, even though USB-C is very common even by 2018 standards. There's no factory reset button on the media player, which isn't concerning, but just unexpected. The USB power wire is 5 feet long, which is decent enough for most home theater systems. Included in the box is an HDMI extender, which gives you an additional 10.5 centimeters of flexible length if plugging the media player directly to your TV is too difficult depending on your setup. This media player does support Wi-Fi 5, but not Wi-Fi 6, which would have been more ideal for a 4K media player, but this gets a pass since it was released in 2018 and Wi-Fi 6 wasn't as common back then. If your Wi-Fi signal is too weak on this device, there is a sold separately Ethernet adapter that you can purchase from Amazon. It also uses Bluetooth 5.0 for private content listening, so basically you can pair a Bluetooth headset and listen to content privately. Although I do notice about a fraction of a second audio sync delay between my headset and what's playing on video. Bluetooth also allows connecting Bluetooth controllers, which I'll get into later on. This media player has 8 GB of internal storage built in, but after many updates when you open it out of the box, you'll only have 4.5 gigabytes available to install apps on. There is a quad-core processor and 1.5 gigabytes of RAM, but none of that really matters with the media player. What matters is real-world use performance, which I'll be demonstrating. The media player and remote only come in a simple black color. The media player is running Android 7.1 at the core as the operating system, with Fire TV OS version 6 as a skin overlay. So switching over to the software side of things, even though this media player is a few years old, this software update was huge in 2021 and kind of breathes in new life to this media player. So we'll start from the left and work our way slowly to the right. So over on the far left, we have profiles, which is basically where you can have additional profiles for different family members. For example, it'll customize the recommended content, the apps being displayed and whatnot. So great addition there by Amazon. Over on home, it's just a collection of pretty much everything. So working our way down, you'll have popular movies and TV shows. But the thing that you'll notice is that it's a majority of Prime content. And a lot of this stuff, I have no idea what it is. I don't care for it. It's just random stuff recommended to me for some reason. Even though it's from my subscription services, it's still majority Prime content. Going a little bit lower, you'll notice that there's an ad. Yeah, Amazon places ad banners here. Sometimes you'll see ads like this or sponsored apps, which are still technically ads. So not welcome from Amazon. Going a little bit further, you have recently used apps, which is a whole collection of them. And I have side-loaded Hulu. I have another video explaining how to get that done. A link to that is in the video description. You notice that the icon is a little strange because app availability will vary depending on your region. So Hulu's not available here. I was able to side-load it. And just going down a little bit further, you'll notice a pattern. So here we have Prime recommended movies, featured apps and games, recently watched. But recently watched is limited to what's only in the Prime content, not say Netflix or Disney Plus, for example. More Prime content, Prime. It's just, you'll notice it's a pattern. It's majority of Prime content kind of shoved in your face. And yes, there is Netflix here, but again, majority of it is Prime content for the most part. So it's really excessive. So what you can do in terms of search, you can search through media content and applications. So for example, let's search for an app. Plex. And that search I just did, I didn't actually do it on that interface. Instead, I just used the button on the remote because that's where the search is actually powered through. We can also search for other things such as media from other apps. It doesn't have to be Prime content. So for example, The Mandalorian. And there you go. It will try to search through its best ability to search through content from other applications. On the note of Because the capability of the Smart Assistant is built into the remote, you can use it as a full-fledged Smart Assistant like you would say on an Echo device. So you can control your smart home devices, for example. So here's a sample. Turn off the dining room lights.
Okay.
Of course, you can't see it here, but the dining room lights have turned off. So again, you have the full-fledged Smart Assistant built into the remote, which works fantastic. Switching over to live, it's just literally a collection of applications that allow for live streaming content. So this could be sports apps, it could be news. Again, these apps will vary depending on the region you live in, of course. Switching over to this banner here, it's just some recently used apps, but also recommended content. So I don't use Photos, but of course Amazon Music and Photos is shoved in here because it's Amazon. But this is where you see a collection of your apps. So you can see the App Store, but to see the full collection, just tap this button. And here you can see all the apps that I've installed. Going over to the App Store itself, this is where you can actually download additional apps. There's no search function built into here for some reason. It's kind of strange. You have to kind of manually search through everything if you're looking for something in particular. The workaround to this to search for an app is to use the voice search through the Smart Assistant, and then it'll try to search through apps for you. And going over to system settings, I'm not going to get into this too deep, just very briefly, because there are some cool features you might be interested in. So for example, you have notifications if there's something new that you should be interested in. So it could be like a new application has been downloaded or some sort of alert regarding your Amazon account perhaps. Equipment controls where you can add more devices. Say if you want to add your soundbar to be controlled by the Fire TV remote, this is where you actually add additional equipment such as that. Remotes and Bluetooth devices, which I'll touch briefly on, you can add devices like another Fire TV remote, perhaps you lost your original one. You can add game controllers, so that means PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X controllers to this device. The only caveat to any of those controllers as of this recording is PlayStation 5, the button mapping is a bit strange. So for example, X is to go back and square is to select, which is not how it operates on a PlayStation 5. For the life of me, I cannot find any option to change the button mapping here in the Fire TV device. So if you plan to play a game on the Fire TV, you have to hope that it has button mapping abilities, and you can customize the PlayStation 5 button mapping. Everything else works just fine. I highly recommend you stick with an Xbox controller if you're going to connect it to this device. I have a link explaining how to do that in the video description for all those controller types. Other Bluetooth devices what you can actually do is pair a mouse, a wireless keyboard, and even a wireless headset. And lastly, going over to preferences, another cool thing I want to show here is parental controls. We can restrict certain content from, kids, for example, or prevent them from buying certain content with your credit card. There's also data monitoring. So data monitoring, if you turn it on, if maybe you have limited data for your home internet use, you can actually cap how much data you're going to use, set the video quality to maybe consume less data. So maybe if you want to consume 1080p content for a while, because 4K content uses more data, you can actually adjust that through here. So this is actually really cool that Amazon included it. Going over just general responsiveness, how the Fire TV device works, it's incredibly responsive. Considering it's a media player stick at the end of the day, it works incredibly fluid. There's zero lag and delay. Even with this massive software update, I was concerned that it was going to kind of make things sluggish. That was not a concern. It works amazingly smooth. Opening through apps such as Plex, Hulu, which I sideloaded again, or even like say YouTube, it works incredibly quickly. Some media players are a little slow on opening certain apps, for example. It depends on which one you're opening, of course. One of the chunkier apps to open is Netflix, if you will. It's a little heavier, takes a little bit longer to load, but even on this device, it's not bad, considering that's just a small stick. And it plays content spectacular, especially if it's 4K content. Depending on the source of the content, if it's 4K and HDR, so it could be Netflix original content, Prime original content, it looks incredible. So the audio video quality you'll get out of this, depending on your TV or sound system, whatever it may be, you will be in for a treat. You will not be disappointed. And the reason some of the quality of the video and audio looks excellent is because this media player supports 4K video at 60 frames a second, as well as Dolby Vision. And in terms of HDR, it does support HDR10, HDR10+, HLG. In terms of audio, it does support Dolby Atmos, Dolby Digital, and Dolby Digital Plus. Another heavy app is Disney Plus, which again, just the loading time of this pop-up screen is pretty similar to what you find on even on an Android phone with a heavier, beefier specs and processor. Once the app is open, navigating content, adding it to your list and whatnot, it works just fine as you would expect and hope. Okay, so now we're diving into Plex. I'm gonna give you some minor technical details you may or may not care about. So this media player on Plex can play H.264 and H.265 1080p content just fine, whether it be an MP4 or MKV file format. I have had no issue. When it comes to 4K files, it can play them. It can play them in MP4 and MKV file format and H.264 compression. But when you push it a little bit harder, that's where it struggles and it's not that great. So I have a file that's in 4K H.265 MKV file format. It's in heavy compression in H.265. This media player can play the file for a few minutes at the most, but then it'll kind of buffer and get stuck. The other limitation I've noticed is that H.264 MP4 file formats with an extremely high bit rate will not play on this media player. So for example, this is recorded from my camera and it's an H.264 MP4 file format at 150 megabits per second bit rate. That is massive, okay? So this media player cannot do it. It'll load forever. Plex for the average person will work just fine. Someone who's just a crazy home theater enthusiast such as myself and has overkill files such as myself, it won't work for you that great. So as you can see, it's working and it froze. So games like Asphalt 8, which is one of the more graphic intensive games available from the App Store, can be played. It's slightly more enjoyable with a gaming controller hooked up. As I mentioned earlier, you can do that. The thing to keep in mind is that yes, you can play it. It's just that it might not be the best experience because the frame rates will tend to drop here and there. Like this is a pretty graphic intensive game that the media player can do. I'm not sure if the camera will pick it up, but I do notice that there are some frame rates that drop significantly. So you're best off still playing like more simpler games on this media player, but yes, you can technically play something like this if you really wanted to. Considering this was released in 2018, even by today's standards, it's a pretty strong contender with its great price tag, although the advertisements and the excessive push for Prime content is not welcome. Keep in mind that also released in late 2020 was a new Google Chromecast running a full operating system, Google TV, with a remote control. Now the thing to keep in mind about that is that here in Canada it's the exact same price point as the Fire Stick TV that I just reviewed. It has access to a much bigger app store, has no advertisements in the interface, and the interface is a lot cleaner, and yes, you can sideload Android apps. With that said, that might actually be worth checking out instead, but I'll leave it up to you to decide. So that's pretty much it from me. I hope you found this video useful. Be sure to check out my social links also in the video description. Hit the like button, it does help, subscribe, and thanks for watching.